All right, hello everyone and welcome. Thank you for attending our webinar today. My name is Ashley Limbers and I'm the marketing lead at Encompass Solutions. At Encompass Solutions, we work with manufacturing businesses to help simplify processes, automate tasks, and improve ROI. And our solutions help streamline operations and reduce inefficiencies across entire businesses. And we are headquartered here in North Carolina, and we have been in business for over 23 years with just over 40 staff members around the globe. One characteristic that makes Encompass Solutions stands out is that we are very partner focused. We have a certified team of consultants that partner with businesses like yours to help with ERP and EDI implementations, software enhancements, customizations, and reporting. And since becoming an Epicor partner in 2003 and Avar in 2005, we have established ourselves as a premier Epicor partner. And our team includes consultants trained in Epicor's implementation methodology, and that ensures consistency and quality in our services. And we maintain a strong collaborative relationship with Epicor, functioning seamlessly as a united team with a single point of accountability. And we are recognized as the go-to partner for Epicor Kinetic. So we are committed to delivering exceptional solutions and support to our clients. And today we are discussing building a cybersecurity program for your business. And this is presented by Ian Collins. Just a few things before we get started. Today's webinar is being recorded and a copy of the recording will be emailed to you. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your Zoom control panel, and we'll bring them up during our Q&A session at the end. And we also encourage you to take the survey after today's event. I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Jason Claggett, our Director of Operations and Advanced Support, to talk a little bit about why cybersecurity and also introduce our speaker for today.
Thank you, Ashley. Good morning, everyone. As cyber threats continue to evolve, building a strong cybersecurity program is essential for protecting your business. Ian Collins from Sigil Defense will guide you through the roadmap for designing and implementing an effective cybersecurity program tailored to your operations. Now I'll turn this over to Ian, but before I do, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Ian. Ian Collins is a cybersecurity professional with nearly a decade of experience mastering secure network architecture, red team attack simulations, and real-world incident response. With a foundation in military signals intelligence and a cybersecurity degree from American Military University, he has delivered CISO level expertise to fortify organizations against advanced threats. Driven by his passion for cybersecurity, Ian also facilitates a cybersecurity group here locally, focused on education and training in the latest cybersecurity and offensive security tactics. So without further ado, I'll turn this over to Ian.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Ashley. Appreciate you guys letting me come out here and talk a little bit about cybersecurity this morning. So yeah, welcome everybody. Today we'll be diving into some essential steps and some tools and some best practices that just about every organization can use to safeguard against cyber threats. So we're going to look at having a clear and actionable cybersecurity strategy, and that's what's more important than ever due to the complexity of cybersecurity as it develops and the threats out there in the wild internet. So we're going to go through the foundational aspects of what it takes to build a strong defense, from identifying potential risks to selecting the right tools and resources. And the goal here is to empower you with some practical insights that can help secure your organization and fortify your defenses against these threats that we see. So we'll cover the agenda. We're going to talk about why cybersecurity matters, right? Why having a strategy matters. Some key components to an effective cybersecurity approach. What it takes to develop a cybersecurity strategy. Step-by-step guide, building strategy tailored to your organization specifically. Identifying and assessing cyber risks, right? Understanding the common threats, the tools and the methods used to assess these risks and vulnerabilities. Some of the essential tools and resources. We'll look at the overview of critical tools, something like firewalls, your EDR, your endpoint detection, your antivirus, and some monitoring tools. We'll look at some useful frameworks and resources to help strengthen your plan and your strategy. And then we'll cover some practical defense tips and how to address some compliance issues. And then feel free to ask any questions. So we'll talk first about why the strategy matters, right? Because the thing we want to emphasize is that strategy is the most important aspect of, for this talk. So in Q2 of 2024, organizations experienced an average of 1,636 cyber attacks per week, which was a 30% year-over-year increase. About 75% of targeted cyber attacks started with an email in 2024, making phishing a primary vector for cybercrime. Most businesses will experience some sort of business email compromise or email takeover within their lifetime. 30% of executives are saying that their budgets aren't sufficient to ensure proper cybersecurity. So it's important that we have a strategy in order to better define our budgets, right? So another is that 23% of companies say that their cybersecurity metrics are really well understood by the board or by senior executives. So it's hard to throw money at something if you don't understand it. And also there's 38% of companies say that they made notable improvements after a breach, right? So this is on the lessons learned. If you experience an issue that potentially costs you money or some downtime or something to that effect, what are you going to do afterwards? Well, if you don't really understand what it is that you're looking at, it's hard to budget for it. Thus, it's also hard to make improvements. So all of these things kind of tie in together. And the average time to detection was about 118 days, which is actually down. It used to be longer. But the average time to detection, meaning the time that a bad actor can infiltrate a network and how long it takes to realize that they're in the network, is still up there at about 118 days, which is still quite long. And just looking forward, 66% of organizations expect that their cybersecurity budget is going to grow within the coming year, and that's going to be pretty much year after year, right? But if we're anticipating our budgets to grow, but we don't understand our metrics, we're unsure how to make improvements, therefore we don't know how to build the budget. The idea is to get you to not waste your time or your money, right? So that's why having a strategy is the most important part. So this is the meat and potatoes, right? This is the secret sauce. How do you go about developing your cybersecurity strategy? It can be done in about 4 or 5 steps. The 5th one is pretty iterative, but these are the steps, right? And step 1 is always you're going to do a risk assessment, right? You need to assess your organization's current security posture. So you're going to identify your critical risks or your critical assets and any potential vulnerabilities, and map those threats, map those risks against threats in the wild, right? And what the impact of those threats against your critical assets will be on your business and on your operations. It's always going to be step 1. You got to do an assessment. A lot of the tools and methods you can do for this, right? You can do vulnerability scans, you can do a penetration test, you can do a framework-based risk assessment, which is a little bit more kind of a question and answer type format. But using any of these, we can often align to a framework or to best practices and say, hey, this is where we're deficient against common threats that are seen out there in the wild. Step 2 is going to be setting your security goals, right? So you got to have a clear objective in mind for what you want to do with your cybersecurity program. So like I said, you want to identify the critical assets and identify what your critical data is. And then you want to reduce the threat exposure. Meaning if things are available out there on the internet that shouldn't be, you need to go ahead and limit that exposure. Enhancing detection and response capabilities, right? This is where the addition of some tools and some technology can be used, and some people to man these tools and technology. That's how you can enhance your detection and response capabilities. You want to ensure compliance with relevant standards. These are all potential goals, right? You want to do your identification, you want to reduce your exposure, you want to enhance your response capabilities, you want to make sure you're compliant with either standards that are appropriate for your business or potentially even for your vendors. Your vendors may require that you have compliance, even if it doesn't directly apply to you, your vendors or your customers, I should say. And then, building a culture of awareness. This could be another objective, right? And should be. You want to build a culture of security awareness within your workforce. Your team should be aware of the threats out there and how common they are and how subject every business is to the threats out there. You want to maintain your business continuity, right? That could be another goal of I want to make sure that if things go south, we're not going to be down for long, and we know exactly how to come back up. And then the last could be maybe you already have some security tools, but you're unsure of their effectiveness, or maybe it takes a long time. Maybe your mean time to detection is still up there, right? So maybe you want to optimize your security operations. These are all what we can set as clear security goals and objectives for our plan. So when strategizing, we're going to strategize first to get an assessment, and then we're going to identify some goals and set our objectives. And then once you do that, step 3 is to define those security policies and controls that help meet those goals and objectives, right? They should all be built around the goals themselves. Things like to get in the weeds, logging standards and what kind of antivirus you use, and all of that stuff should be defined within your security policies and the controls listed therein. You can get a lot of these from frameworks as well, so you don't have to make this stuff up. You can go and look at, there's many different frameworks that will map controls to different domains of operations, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. Step 4 is to establish a response and recovery plan, right? So it's not a question of if you get attacked, but when. So when you get attacked, you want to make sure that you have a good continuity plan, and you know how to respond and how to quickly recover, and how to take your lessons learned from that and shore up your defenses for the next time. Which kind of takes us into step 5, which is ensure your ongoing and assessment and adaptation, right? So you always want to be testing your response and recovery plan, testing it, and then adapting it to your workforce as it changes, because your company evolves over time, so your plan should too. And doing these assessments on an iterative basis will make sure that you're always up to date with what your current workforce looks like, what your organization is shaped like. And so you always want to make sure you're reviewing it at least on an annual basis. So that's it. That's the how-to, right? At a top level, how do you develop your cybersecurity strategy? It's going to be done in these 5 steps. So talking about assessing the cyber risks, right, and the security posture, you can do a risk assessment. I briefly mentioned earlier, by identifying your critical assets and then mapping vulnerabilities to them, mapping those common threats. So like phishing, ransomware, insider threats, and what the impact is on your business operations. This can be done by doing a business impact analysis, where you take the probability of execution, you take the probability against how much damage it's going to cause, right? And then you say how risky is this threat, and then what do we do? How much effort should we put towards mitigating it, right? So you got to map out what you have, and you map it against the threats that are out there. You can do these with risk assessments, right? Vulnerability scans. There are endless tools out there on the market to do vulnerability scans. You can often get a third party to come in and do a vulnerability scan. Oftentimes it's if you don't have a lot of in-house expertise, it's better to use somebody to come in and do a scan from the outside. They can provide you with a good roadmap on how to develop what the recommended solutions are, right? Because sometimes the solutions that come baked into some of these programs are not necessarily super clear if you're unsure how to mitigate them. So you can do a vulnerability scan, you can do a risk assessment, again, using frameworks out there, like the NIST. There's NIST CSF, which is a cybersecurity framework. That's a pretty common one, and it's a great place to start. So that's it, right? You assess the cyber risk and your security posture, and then what you do is you add in your controls, right? So you identify your security posture by, once you map those out, you say, okay, what are the controls that I can put in place to mitigate these threats? For example, phishing. As we mentioned, earlier on, phishing is the #1 threat out there, and every organization will experience phishing, and every organization will experience a business email compromise at one point or another. So how do you defend against it, right? Well, the primary method is through training. Phishing is the act of sending a fraudulent email, trying to get a user to click on a link, open an attachment, submit credentials, change wiring information, things like that. Well, those are all human-based attacks, right? They attack the human, the user sitting behind the computer. So if the user is well trained on how phishing techniques work and how to avoid them, then you can successfully mitigate phishing at a significantly higher rate than you could otherwise. You know, insider threats, right? There's people within your organization that, depending on your vertical, depending on what you do and what you build, folks can run off with that information, right? And they can, people can take your data and take it out and send it to the highest bidder, or people will do different things when they're presented with the right amount of money. So insider threats, always a risk. And DLP, which is data loss prevention, which is a technical tool that is used to keep sensitive data from either coming into your network, meaning you don't want ever to take responsibility for it to begin with, or to keep it from leaving your network, right? So downloading a bunch of sensitive files on a thumb drive, sending a bunch of documents through an email, uploading them to places they're not supposed to be uploaded. This kind of data loss prevention, right? It keeps your financial information, your client lists, any of your intellectual property, it keeps all that within your network. Ransomware, always a big one, been around for quite some time at this point. But ransomware, right? How do we prevent against that? Well, there's a handful of technical tools. So there's endpoint detection response, or EDR, which is the new word for antivirus. Basically utilizing AI, it can help defend computers against things like ransomware and other viruses. Security information and event management, SIM. That is enhanced logging, right? So every machine on a network writes logs, and if you capture all those logs and aggregate them, and then again using AI to alert on them, you can be alerted to suspicious behavior within your network and by your users and by your devices. This is probably one of the best ways that you can get an early warning response, is with SIM and logging technology. That's how you can avoid things like ransomware. And that's usually how you identify a bad actor in your environment significantly earlier than just using an EDR platform alone. But this is how you identify your security posture, right? So you say, what controls do I put in place between my assets and the threats that we see out there in the wild? And then when you identify those things, you can say, okay, here's some gaps. Right? These are some security controls I need to put in place because I'm clearly missing a piece here between what's coming at me and what my assets are. Things like your financial information, your production information, any intellectual property data, or just other sensitive data you may have. So again, talk about those essential tools, right? Technical tools. We talked about EDR, we talked about SIM. Vulnerability management is the concept of regularly doing vulnerability scans on a daily or weekly basis, right? And keeping up with that, and making sure that if you have vulnerabilities either inside or outside of your network, that those are managed and those are addressed timely. Secure architecture is just a concept of how you build your network, right? Building your network in a taking security in mind at the beginning can make it a lot easier to manage, especially when it comes to vulnerabilities. And just for a bad actor to navigate around the network is significantly harder with a network that's been built securely at the beginning. IDS is an intrusion detection system, usually in line with the SIM. It also creates a lot of logs. We call it east-west or north-south traffic. East-west meaning traffic within the network, and then north-south meaning traffic leaving your network, right? So this is, you want to make sure that you have the ability to detect any intrusions from outside or within. And then the first on the list, but the last one essentially is the firewalls, right? So that's your network perimeter. Having all these technical tools in place, just having a plan for them. These are places that you can allocate your budget, right? So if you're unsure what your metrics are, or you're unsure where to put your budget to increase your cybersecurity posture, these are some of the technical tools where that can go. Frameworks. I mentioned frameworks a lot, and I didn't really mention any of them other than CSF. But these are some pretty common ones. These are pretty standard. So as I mentioned, the NIST CSF, Cybersecurity Framework, they're on to version 2.0. It has a 5-section, or it is a 5-section process that is pretty similar to the 5-step roadmap that we identified earlier. It's a little bit different because it's more specific. But if you're looking for a framework, it's a great place to start, right? It'll map controls, meaning your firewalls, your EDRs, and things like that. It will map them to the goals that you're trying to achieve. CMMC is coming down the pipe, which is the Certified Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification version 2. And this is coming down from the Department of Defense. If you are in control of controlled unclassified information or federal contract information, CUI or FCI, that is all going to be subject under the CMMC framework here within the next year or so. So if you've got any government contracts, whether you're either a prime or a sub, getting ahead of CMMC is going to be one of the things that's going to be high on the priority list. So you may be responsible for this from a contract perspective, but also it's a great place to just kind of take care of some basic cyber hygiene, right? If you're looking for answers on what exactly you need to do, frameworks are a great place to start. Same thing with the NIST Special Publication 800. It has many subsections. If you look at SP 800-53, that one is that one's kind of the beast, and it'll have the most controls probably, along with the ISO 27001. So frameworks are important not only as a great place to start, but they're also important if you are if you're subject to any of these controls and compliance reasons, right? So if you have compliance reasons and you need to be compliant with these frameworks, again, this is why these are important. Some additional resources that are oftentimes free, or there are at least free versions of. Threat intel feeds. These are just communities out there that provide a lot of threat information regarding what's going on in the wild. The FBI has one. If you just Google threat intel feeds, you'll be able to see a handful of free resources. CISA as well, another government agency for regarding infrastructure, they'll have intelligence feeds. Training programs. Any training programs based on any of the frameworks or any cybersecurity training programs, right? These are things that you can find online, find trainers to specifically talk about cybersecurity. Leveraging a security operations center, right? So that's a staff of cybersecurity professionals who monitor those technical tools over there in the box on the left. So if you have your logging platform taking in all your data, we need somebody to monitor and manage that, right? So that's where leveraging a security operations center, either building one in-house or outsourcing it using what's called SOC as a service. That can be used to monitor and manage those tools, and because those tools can be running, and if you don't have anybody looking after them, then you can be effectively spending money but ineffectively enhancing your posture. And that's why we talked about in the beginning why a strategy is so important, because your budgeting may go one way or the other, but you want your effectiveness to be commensurate with the amount of money that you spend on it. And then the last one, essentially, like I mentioned, was third-party assessments, right? They can help with understanding the solutions and the best ways forward after doing all your risk assessments. All right, so we'll get into some practical tips, right? These are some quick takeaways, some things that if you either are on the team and you're concerned about cybersecurity, or you're concerned about cybersecurity, and these are things you could potentially hand off to your IT folks. These are some great quick takeaways, right? So automating the update process, or at least having some reporting functions on your update process, making sure that your updates are getting pushed out on time, all the time. Implementing multi-factor authentication where possible. If you haven't done this already, if the insurance companies haven't forced you to do it, they will soon. Multi-factor is pretty much a demand on every system everywhere, at the very least by insurance at this point to qualify for cyber insurance. And it can be relatively easy to implement depending on the situation, but it's usually a very easy win when talking to vendors, customers, insurance providers, anybody. They're going to ask you, do you have multi-factor on this? And if you can say yes, it's an easy one to just walk away from, and they say, okay, next question. Enforcing strong password policies. This can be done in a handful of ways. There are technical tools to make sure that this happens, but also just building that culture of security awareness, making sure everybody knows what a strong password is, and then that they have to use it all the time, right? And if you can give them tools like how to remember strong passwords. NIST recently released new guidelines about what makes a strong password, and actually a memorable password is significantly more secure than one that's hard to remember, which was the case for a long time, and why it was one of the biggest stumbling blocks for people to actually use strong passwords, because they were hard to remember. So I would definitely encourage you to check those out. Again, regular employee training on security awareness. This can either be done in-house. There's material out there, and you can train on it, or you can partner with somebody who can offer you, quarterly training, specifically around cybersecurity awareness and how to avoid phishing attacks. This one is another easy win that if you just implement it and you push for that culture of security, it'll get you a lot of points, and your security posture will benefit greatly. Again, phishing is the #1 weapon, so the human should be the last line of defense, but it's seemingly both the first and last, because it's the first thing to be attacked and the last thing that has to go through in order to get into the network. And then, identifying any compliance shortcomings for any existing frameworks you already are aligned to, or anything that if you're currently not aligned to any, but you are looking for a place to start, going to the NIST CSF, that's going to be a great place to start, and just start aligning your cybersecurity objectives to becoming NIST CSF compliant. Now, compliant doesn't always mean secure, and secure doesn't always mean compliant, but it's a great place to begin your strategy. So what do we talk about, right? We talked about how to develop a strong cybersecurity strategy with those 5 steps, identifying and assessing your risks, utilizing your tools and resources, strengthening your defenses, right, through ensuring compliance, prioritizing cybersecurity as your strategic focus, right? We want to make sure that as we move forward and we build our objectives, cybersecurity is in our business objectives, because we don't want to experience any of the downtime or any of the financial impact associated with cybersecurity incidents if we just prioritize it in our strategy in the first place. And then, like I said, just iteratively, at least annually, looking through our policies, looking through our controls, making sure that we're adapting to the new threats that are out there, and just engaging with the folks in the cybersecurity community, right? There's a lot of us out there. We're always talking about a shortage, but there's definitely a lot of us out there. And just getting involved and staying on top of what the new threats are, and getting a little bit of guidance. This is always something that can help when it comes to building your strategy for cybersecurity specifically. And with that, we'll go ahead and take it over to Q&A if anybody's got any questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Ian. That was a lot of great information and tools and resources for building a cybersecurity program. Let me just see. It doesn't look like we have any questions at this time. Just a reminder, if you do have a question, be sure to type that into the Q&A box on your control panel, and we'll give folks another minute to go ahead and type in their questions. In the meantime, Ian, was there anything else that you wanted to mention before we leave today?
Nothing specifically, but if you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I think my contact information is in here somewhere. But starting with an easy framework and then just building on your tools and building on your strategy before you do anything, budget wise. These are all I can't stress enough that like a strategy is the first step, getting that assessment and getting your strategy in place.
Great. It looks like we've covered all of our questions for today. You did a great job. Thank you. If they wanted more information about Sigil Defense, where should they go?
Yeah. So if you want any more information from me, you can go to our website, sigildefense.com. You can email info@sigildefense.com, or you can email me directly, icollins@sigildefense.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see everyone next time. Thank you.